We had just replaced this other concrete for about $70,000. I thought, wow, that's a big bill. Hi, I'm John Barnett, and I led the project at the McCall Donnelly School District for resurfacing the sidewalk at the elementary school that was destroyed by salt snowmelt. So we arrived on site to actually talk about paint. As I walked up to the sidewalk, I looked down and I just was kind of appalled how bad it was. The condition of the concrete was so degraded that I just asked him, what are you going to do with the concrete? And he pointed down the way, and they'd said, well, we had just replaced this other concrete for about $70,000. And I thought, wow, that's a big bill. So we started discussing some options. So eventually the concrete would have completely failed. There wouldn't have been anything left. The aggregate or the rocks that are inside the concrete would have started coming out. What was sticking up was very sharp, so if anybody fell down, they were gonna skin their knee pretty bad. So there was a lot of challenges with it, and they continued to throw snowmelt or salt down onto the concrete. So it was just gonna get worse and worse. There's several solutions to concrete that is in this condition. You can remove it, replace it, that's one. That's very expensive. The second is to resurface it, and there are a number of resurfacing products out on the market. I like NewCrete from Rapid Set because it actually looks like new concrete when it's finished. It's a strong product, goes down nice and thin, but it covers everything, gives you a brand new surface. And just after looking at what they had there, I immediately thought of NewCrete. They said, well, we have a little bit of money left in the budget, let's give it a shot. So the process it's actually fairly simple. You just have to have good skills with trowels. So the process first is to pressure wash or clean the surface as much as possible. Anything on the surface that isn't concrete, to get it off. There were a lot of cracks and all the joints. You'll see in the photos, the joints had to be filled as well and then cut back. So we used another Rapid Set product to do that. It was called Vertical Overhead, VO. The VO product is what we used to rebuild the radius of the top of the curb because it had pretty much decayed. It was almost at a 45-degree angle. It was no longer this nice 90-degree rounded off corner. So we had to rebuild that first. And then the process of actually installing the NewCrete goes on in 2 layers. So we do a base coat to kind of fill the surface texture to kind of give it a nearly smooth surface. And then the second layer goes on to give it the wear surface. That's what you're walking on. Durability, it's actually stronger than regular concrete. So regular concrete, the concrete they had there is 3,500 PSI, pounds per square inch of impact resistance. The NewCrete comes in at 6,000 PSI, nearly double. The reason why is because it's actually a modified cement. It's not actually regular cement. So it can go down very thin, and the thinner you put it down, the stronger it actually is. And it bonds to the surface so well that it becomes part of the surface of the concrete, the top surface of the concrete. So because it's a modified cement, it has ice melt resistance, which is basically sodium or salt. They use other products now too, but that's the old one that everybody throws salt down, right? The NewCrete is unaffected by sodium. So the surface looks a little bit different than regular concrete. It has a texture to it, which is kind of like a sandy texture. It's not loose sand, obviously it's part of the cement, but it has a texture to it which is small granules. It gives a little better traction than actual concrete as far as the finish goes. That's the natural finish of it. It has a very small aggregate in the actual product, which gives it that nice texture on top for traction. And with regular concrete, when they pour it as one big, heavy, thick mass. This is going down as a real thin resurfacer, but super strong. Let's go back to what they paid for the other sidewalk. So the other $70,000 sidewalk, that was a complete removal and replacement of the entire sidewalk, which also is very loud, dirty, and messy. Took a long time. I think he said it took 2.5 weeks to actually do that. We resurfaced the same amount of square footage with NewCrete in 4 days for $20,000. So as long as the concrete is intact, there can be cracks, there can be chunks broken out, But as long as it's solid and intact and it's not moving, or in other words, it's heaving up because of a tree root or something like that, NewCrete is a great answer for resurfacing. If they have heaving, or they have where the concrete is deflecting and there's actually like a ridge you could trip on, that's a whole different situation. You may want to cut that part of the concrete out and replace it before resurfacing.